So recently, we saw the release of the Wonka prequel starring Timothée Chalamet. And I'll be honest, coming into this film, I was a massive doubter. I saw the trailer and I liked the Paddington vibe the director was bringing to it, but beyond that, I didn't feel all that impressed. I wasn't sure it was actually going to be any good, and I was pretty sure that Chalamet was not the right fit for the part of Wonka. Okay, so it released, and I think it seems to be doing very well. So far, it's grossed $43 million overall, and be aware that when I saw this, it hadn't come out in the US yet, and these numbers are without the box office giant that is the United States. So I'd expect that at the end of the day, the movie's going to be a massive earner and cement Chalamet as a box office star. I mean, maybe he already was, but this is just proof. Are we coming back to the days of actors being the actual box office draw now, instead of just the franchise? I kind of hope so. Anyway, so financially, the film is clearly going to do quite well. It would honestly be kind of funny if it did end up flopping in the US market after me talking it up so much and therefore making me look very stupid, but I do doubt that it's going to be a flop. I think it's going to do serious business. Anyway, that's just the financials. The actual reviews, they're pretty good too. No audience rating as of yet, but there's a critical score, which as of writing this is 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think that's a pretty damn good score, all things considered. I was expecting like 50 to 60. But hey, they liked it, and when I saw it, I really liked it. There's nothing quite like going into a film with rock bottom expectations and finding that it's indeed a classic. Absolutely excellent. And in a moment we'll dive into why, but before that, spoiler alert. We are dealing with spoilers from now on, so be warned. If you care about not knowing the plot, here is the off-ramp. Anyway, the film follows the character of Willy Wonka, an aspiring chocolatier who arrives in a generic European city, but probably in like France or Belgium, just based on context clues, desiring to become a world-famous chocolate maker to feel closer to his dead mother. Willy quickly finds himself going bankrupt, bullied by the local chocolate cartel, yes, that's indeed a thing, and forced into legal slavery after signing a dodgy contract with a local boarding house after not reading the fine print, because he can't read. He bonds with his fellow inmates, most notably the young orphan Noodle, and together they begin to operate a guerrilla chocolate enterprise, which eventually transitions into a fully fledged chocolate shop. A shop which is then sabotaged by the cartel and the boarding house owners. And in exchange for Willy leaving town forever, he's able to get the money to free his friends from slavery, only for the cartel to then double-cross him for no real reason at all, leaving Noodle in prison, as it turns out that she was entitled to some of the money from a key cartel member, as she's his illegitimate niece. And on top of that, they try to assassinate Willy even after he'd left town. So he comes back to town with the help of an Oompa Loompa named Lofty, who's hunted him for years, stealing chocolate to repay his debt to Loompaland society. As it turns out, years prior, Willy had stolen their very few cocoa beans and gotten Lofty banished from the island as he had fallen asleep whilst on guard duty. The cartel then loses their secret stash of high-quality chocolates, which they'd been using to bribe people, as regular folks could only get poor-quality watered-down chocolate as, once again, they had a monopoly. They were the cartel. They're then arrested, along with the corrupt chief of police who'd gotten morbidly obese from all the chocolate bribes, and Willy buys out a castle to build his chocolate factory, with all our heroes getting a happy ending. Okay, so since we just walked through the outline of the story, I may as well give my thoughts on that. I didn't expect it to be so random and ridiculous, but I suppose I should have, because Paddington 1 and 2 were completely and utterly absurd in the most ridiculous ways. But this isn't a negative. It lends the film a very light-hearted and fantastical air. And I know some people have criticized the movie for not having the same edge as the other Wonka movies, but I actually think it works in this film's favor. It's clearly trying something different, and it taps into that Paddington vibe that works very well. It makes the characters likable and exciting and fun, and it shows off what a less jaded Willy Wonka would look like before he was screwed over by his employees who sold his secrets to his competitors. On top of that, for the last few years I have felt like we're in an era where everything and everyone seems to need some sort of edge, needs to have a darker and serious element that lets you take the film seriously. And yeah, I guess Wonka does have some things like that, like when they tried to assassinate him, twice, but they do soften it. They make it silly, because sometimes you just need a goofy film. So yes, they try to kill him, but with cartoonishly absurd levels of dynamite with very long fuses. All there for dramatic and comedic effect. Or they try to drown him and a little girl, but in a vat filled with milk chocolate slowly rising to the surface. There's also the fact that Willy is contending with corrupt cops and a mafia-like organization, only it's surrounding the chocolate trade, and he's also forced into slavery, but it's kind of funny. On top of that, there's a vault filled with chocolate underneath a cathedral that's guarded by chocoholic monks. It's so absurd that it feels like a parody, but it works because the film doesn't make it feel stupid. It doesn't make it feel like a parody or out of place in this world. And that's the same vibe that films like Barbie and Paddington have. And I think people appreciate that because they're in the mood for more lighthearted stories that can still have those darker elements or tell deeper stories, but don't take themselves too seriously either. And I think they really succeeded at that with Wonka. On top of that, the world design, the costume set, props, even just the color grading and all that, it's not dreary or grungy, it's just happy, bright and colorful and exciting. It gets you excited, it gets you hyped, it makes you more willing to engage with the silliness of it all. And it just further ties into that key factor. This film is made to be enjoyed, and it was made for no other reason, besides to make money. And I'm really enjoying that fact. In terms of the acting, the film's great, but of course, the main thing we have to talk about is Wonka himself, Timothée Chalamet. So I was so certain he was miscast and that he'd be the weakest part of the movie, but I take it back. The dude is on fire in this one. A really great performance that shows he has so much range. I never thought he'd be able to do this kind of role, but he just fits for me. He's able to capture this absurd brilliance, eccentricity, vulnerability, naivety, innocence, compassion, grief. It's all wrapped up into one package. I mean, I knew the dude had acting chops, I'd seen him before, but I don't think it's easy to take a role and a character and a script that is as silly as this and make it come to life in such a crucial way. So props to him. Also, I thought his singing was really good too, which brings me to the soundtrack. I honestly had no idea that it was going to be a musical, and I'll be honest, I hate it when random songs are sprung on me like that. So at the start, when he starts singing, I remember thinking, oh, here we go. But by the end of the song, it had won me over. Both through the good singing, but also just the well-written and catchy songs. And I've been listening to those songs on repeat since I got home. They're just so good. Literally none of them misfire. They don't lose your interest, they aren't bland. Hell, they even give a good crack at Pure Imagination. Not quite as iconic as the original, but they gave it a good go. And they didn't disgrace themselves either. Really just, the film's so much fun. It captures the excitement and the wonder of the world of Willy Wonka and combines it with some eccentric Paddington vibes and then tops it off with good performances and good songs. What is not to love? And so yeah, go see the movie. It is really, really good. One of my favorites of the year. And that's the end of the review. So I will remind you that these have just been my opinions and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the movie if you've seen it? Did you like it, hate it? If you haven't seen it, are you now excited to? Maybe not? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment and subscribe and let me know.